Hello, this is Chef John from foodwishes.com with Antipasto Pasta Salad. That's right, an antipasto is a cold platter of meat, cheese, and vegetables, which is served at the start of a meal before the pasta and other courses. But to save some time, I thought we would add the pasta right to the antipasto to turn it into a complete meal all by itself. And while like any pasta salad, you could serve this as a side dish, I really don't think you're going to need to, as this really was extremely satisfying. So with that, let's go ahead and get started with one of the most important factors to successfully making this salad, and that would be the way we cut up the ingredients, which I will demonstrate on this salami. And to prep this, what I'm going to do is take a stack and cut it in half, and then we'll lay one half over the top of the other, at which point we'll turn it and proceed to slice down into very, very thin strips. Or if you want to get fancy, you could call it a julienne. And because I'm using a corkscrew-shaped pasta, by cutting all our ingredients like this, or as close as we can get to this, they're going to very easily wrap themselves around the pasta, so when we eat it, we're going to get all that goodness on every forkful. So that's how we'll do our assorted salamis and pepperonis. And then we'll attempt to do the exact same thing with our cheese, which for me will be this sliced provolone. And because we're starting with a bigger piece, I'm going to go ahead and cut this into thirds, instead of in half like the salami. Because one of the rules of antipasto pasta salad is that none of the ingredients should be cut longer than the pasta itself. So we'll go ahead and cut that into nice thin strips as shown. And then attempt to do the same with every other ingredient, right? Whether it's peppers or onions or olives or whatever we're using. We'll do our best to cut them into as thin as strips as we can. Okay, so how we cut the ingredients is the first big secret to success. And now we'll move on to the next two, which both have to do with how we cook our pasta. And the first one is make sure we boil our fusilli in very, very well salted water. And I can't stress that enough. So please salt that water very aggressively. And then the other secret is make sure we cook our pasta all the way until it's done. Alright, I have no idea where people got the idea that undercooking pasta was a good idea for salad. But it's not, it's a terrible idea. So I really think we should cook it the full time on the package, or until whatever time you determine it's perfectly ready to eat. And it's surprising how many times I've heard that in my career from actual chefs, even in places like culinary school. And apparently their thinking was that it would soften up as it sat with the dressing, which it sort of will if it's undercooked, since it is still absorbing moisture. But that texture is never as good as if it was just cooked all the way in this boiling water. And then what we'll do once we have determined it's been cooked to perfection is go ahead and drain it very well, but do not, under any circumstances, rinse it. Okay, just drain it and put it back in the pot. And while it sits there draining, it is not a bad idea to give it a stir or two with a spoon, which is going to help release a lot of that residual heat. And then what we'll do is just let that sit for about 5 or 10 minutes, which is just about how long it's going to take us to make our dressing. And that's going to start by adding 1 crushed garlic clove plus 1 anchovy fillet to a large mixing bowl. And we'll go ahead and give all that a quick mashing with the end of our whisk, or a fork, or the back of a spoon if you're in a hurry. And then once we have that all broken up, we'll go ahead and add 1 spoon of Dijon, plus 2 spoons of mayonnaise, followed by whatever vinegar we're going to use here, which for me was a nice red wine vinegar. Although if you wanted something a little bit on the sweeter side, you could use balsamic, or of course a combination. We will also want to add a pinch of salt, as well as some freshly ground black pepper. And you could do some cayenne also, but my pepperoni was really spicy, so I didn't. And then we'll finish up with a spoon of dry oregano, as well as a little bit of dried thyme. And that's it, we'll give this a quick mix before we add our oil. And by the way, if you or yours do not like anchovy, add it anyway. When this dressing's done, there's no way in a million years anyone could tell there's anchovy in it, and it really does enhance the flavor. So if you have to sneak it in secret, go ahead. And the same goes for that little bit of mustard. All right, you're not really going to taste it, but it is important. And that's it. Once that's whisked, we'll go ahead and slowly drizzle in our olive oil while whisking constantly. And while we do want to start off drizzling very slowly at the beginning, after about a third of it has been incorporated, and we can see that we have a decent emulsification underway, we can start to pour a little more quickly and aggressively. But as you're whisking, make sure what you've poured in has been emulsified before you pour some more. And above and beyond adding a little bit of flavor, that mustard and mayo we added really makes this emulsification a lot easier. And if everything goes according to plan, by the time the last of that oil's been whisked in, you should be looking at a beautifully smooth, definitely not separated, slightly thickened dressing. This should coat a spoon like this, and should hold some very sharp lines if you drag your finger across the back. So that was perfect. And of course you can taste and adjust if need be. And then what we'll do once that's set is go ahead and transfer in our still pretty hot fusilli. And we'll go ahead and stir that until it's thoroughly coated. And because we didn't rinse it, the surface of our pasta has a nice sticky layer of starch, which is really going to help it grab onto and absorb our dressing. And then technically we should let this cool down to about room temp before we add the rest of the ingredients. But I think it's perfectly fine to start adding some of our vegetable ingredients while it's still a little bit warm. And for me, those will include some finely sliced red onion, some finely sliced jalapeno pepper, or any fresh green pepper. I'm also going to do some pickled pepper in the form of pepperoncini. And then I'm also going to do a whole bunch of thinly sliced roasted red pepper, which are fine from the jar, but even better if you fire roast them and peel them yourself. And which one did I use? I'd rather not say. And we'll go ahead and stir those in. And then I went ahead and finished up with my vegetable additions by adding a jar of drained baby artichoke hearts, which I quartered, as well as some thinly sliced black and green olives, which I think are also one of the big keys here. Right, those little bites of briny sharp flavor really help bring all the other flavors together. And with each addition and subsequent stirring, this mixture is continuing to cool. And hopefully by now all this is cooled down to room temp, because we don't want to add our meats and cheeses to this while it's warm. But mine was fine, so I went ahead and transferred in my thinly sliced salami, as well as some extra spicy pepperoni. And then I finished up my meat additions with some ham, at which point we'll give this all a very thorough mixing before we add our sliced cheese. Right, that provolone's going to mix in a lot easier and a lot better and a lot more uniformly if everything else is mixed beforehand. And also, make sure you leave that stuff in the fridge until the last second. Right, we want all those little strips cold and firm. And obviously, if you want to include other Italian meats and cheeses in this, go ahead. I mean, you are, after all, the DJ Khaled of making your salad valid. So as long as it's something that would normally appear on an antipasto platter, it would be perfectly appropriate to add to this. And that's it. We'll go ahead and give this one last mix before we wrap it up and pop it in the fridge for at least 3 or 4 hours. Or even overnight is fine. And while you could taste and adjust at this point, it is always better to wait until this is cold and all those flavors have had time to come together. So I went ahead and wrapped that up and popped it in the fridge until I was ready for service. And then what we'll do at this point is unwrap it and add our last 2 ingredients, a whole bunch of freshly chopped Italian parsley and a pint of cherry tomatoes that I cut in quarters. And I think both these ingredients are much better added at the last second than if we mixed them in with the other ingredients. Okay, we want that parsley nice and bright and green, and we don't want that moisture pulled out of our tomatoes, which is what would happen if we added them earlier. And as we mix this, you can really see why we cut our ingredients into the shape that we did, which is what really makes this salad so user-friendly. And if I've only learned one thing doing this, it's always be friendly to your users. And of course, after tossing, we will give it a taste, and we can adjust with more salt or oil or vinegar or whatever you think it needs. But I'm happy to report mine was perfect, so I went ahead and served that up in a wooden bowl and added a little touch of parsley to the top. And yes, to make it look nicer, I did oil the wood, which is why it's glistening, like a young Arnold Schwarzenegger. You're welcome for the visual. And that's it, my Antipasto Pasta Salad was ready to enjoy. And that, my friends, was not only just a tremendously delicious pasta salad, it was a tremendously satisfying and delicious meal. All right, if you had a hunk of crusty bread and a glass of wine, I'm not sure what else you need. But if you must insist on serving this as a side dish, because that's just how your brain works, I think this would be absolutely gorgeous, with some grilled lemon and garlic marinated chicken breasts. Oh yes, that would work nicely. But regardless of whether you enjoy this as a side dish or a main course, I really do hope you give it a try soon. So please follow the links below for the ingredient amounts, a printable written recipe, and much more info as usual. And as always, enjoy.